We are 3 weeks out from the election, and spending in the Denver school board races has topped $1.3 million. Pro-reform groups and candidates currently outpace their teacher union-backed rivals. The one exception to that is candidate Scott Baldermann, who has spent over $300,000 of his own cash in an attempt to win the Southeast District seat. Melanie, you are our person on education issues with Chalk Beat, Colorado. The school board races usually do not make these kind of headlines, especially with millions of dollars attached to it. This sounds a little crazy. What do we need to know about what's going on in the DPS races?
Yeah, so these races have actually been pretty big money for a while now. $1 million isn't a record. There have been more expensive elections. I think that Denver is a place in the country that's really a battleground for kind of the big debate in education, reform versus anti-reform, stuff like charter schools, stuff like should we close low-performing schools and restart them? Should we let families choose schools? Denver's really been sort of on the forefront of all those policies, and people who both like those policies and don't like those policies pour a lot of money into Denver. So that's why you're seeing all this money. That's why you're seeing all this attention. Scott Baldermann's spending, though, is unprecedented. Never before has a single candidate poured that much of his own money.
He's like a tech billionaire, right?
Into
A
a
millionaire,
race.
right?
He built a web application for the construction industry. I don't understand all the ins and outs, but he sold it and has been a stay-at-home parent since. So, yeah.
So that's the way to do it, I guess. If you're gonna put up $300,000 of your own money, and you make a lot of money with a really cool app. That sounds great. Wendy, this seems to me that it's speaking to the politics because we're in DPS. It's not as if this is a clearly partisan race. I mean, in Denver, you're not going to run as a Republican, but you're clearly seeing divisions. And even folks who are saying, hey, I think there's a candidate in Scott Baldermann's race, and forgive me for forgetting her name, but she's like, with all the different money coming in here, I don't have a chance to actually get my message out. And it's not as if they break down partisan lines. Are we going to be seeing more of this within races, especially like DPS?
Yeah, I mean, Radhika Nath is who you're talking about, Dr. Nath, and she's fantastic. We endorsed her. But I think that this is actually, as Melanie was saying, this is kind of par for the course in Denver, unfortunately. The Washington Post has actually reported on it, and just we are, one of us, New Orleans, a couple other towns are like the epicenters of this, reform movement that has been that's been occurring in the country, and frankly, this is Wall Street money. This is the Walton Foundation. This is hedge funds down in southern Manhattan, who are pouring money into these AstroTurf groups like DFER, like Stand for Children, like these sorts of organizations that are attempting to influence our local elections for volunteer positions, by the way, and thinking because they want Denver to be a model for their ideology. And frankly, I think they need to go home, and if they want to do that, do it in New York.
Patty, DPS makes headlines all the time, but not always with the school board. The school board races are clearly making news of their own. What do you make of what we've seen so far?
Well, let's remember the school board's been pretty controversial as it swings back and forth over the last decade. It's a ridiculous amount of money to spend for a position like this, but we have to remember that residents of Denver can still go out, educate themselves, read Chalk Beat, find out what they think. You don't have to buy these elections. You can get out, volunteer. Shoe leather makes up for a lot of what you're doing in a campaign like this because it's not the whole state. It is just the city. So other candidates have a chance, but you've got to get out and really have your voice heard.
David, I'm used to hearing the reform comments about Jeffco, about Douglas County. Maybe I'm just being blind to it, but I didn't think DPS was the hub of this kind of work. But you have done a lot of work when it comes to things like this. What do you think?
Well, Democrats for Education Reform has been a long-standing Colorado group with great leaders in it, like Peter Groff, the first black man to be president of the Colorado Senate, and who later went on to be a education official in the Obama administration. And the point of view of them and similar Colorado reformers is that families ought to have a choice. So that's why they're in favor of public charter schools. because there's built-in quality control. If the school's no good, then people don't go, and it gets closed down automatically. It doesn't have some perpetual existence if it's not providing what families need. In contrast, low-performing traditional neighborhood schools, the ones that are most under the thumb of the teachers union and employees union, the anti-reform people say, well, they should never close, no matter how bad they're doing. Never start over. It's always more money, but less and less choice. So there's a lot of talk about celebrating diversity and things like that, but when it comes to practical actions, the anti-reform side is very much against allowing diversity for families.